Welcome in, everyone, to the George Mason Basketball Coaches Show with Tony Skinn. I'm your host, Bill Rowland, and we appreciate you coming out and joining us here this evening. Coming up on the show today, we'll talk to Coach Skinn about the end of the regular season and the upcoming A-10 tournament. Also, our special guest, Vanessa Blair-Lewis of the women's team, will be joining us as well. They have their conference tournament coming up beginning on Friday. We'll talk to her, get all the details on that. Going to start here with Coach Skinn. And Tony, I know this is a tough time of the year as you get kind of towards the end of the regular season. Conference tournament starts next week. Guys have been through the grinder. You know, it's tough. Everybody's dealing with injuries here over the past couple of weeks, whether it's your team, whether it's other teams in the conference all over the country. How have you guys been able to kind of keep a core group together and kind of fight through this as you've dealt with a few injuries here as of late?
Yeah, no, it's we've been very, very fortunate in the injury department, pretty much for the start of the season. And as we roll into March, it's been rough. It's been rough with, obviously Ronald Polite going down, Keyshawn Hall going down. But we've had some guys that have gotten some really good minutes early on in the season. And I just thought even the other night against Duquesne, for the most part, we battled. But that's just the conference, man. It's one possession after the other, and if you don't take care of business, you lose at home, and that's what just kind of happened to us on Saturday against Duquesne.
I know obviously it's disappointing now in the midst of the three-game losing streak, but if you take the larger view of this season and you look at 18 wins, you yourself as a first-year head coach, 18 wins when you look at bringing in 10 new players and trying to get them to mesh all together, and you look how close you were with one-possession games against UMass. I hate to bring them back up, but UMass, Fordham, St. Joe's, you guys could easily be 10-6 in conference play, already be at 20 wins. And I know it's tough to look at those things now, and there's plenty of time to do that at the end of the season. But at some level, you've got to feel good about the job you and your staff have done this year.
It's I think that's the toughest part of coaching. I don't know how I still have any hair on my head. It's tough when you go back and you watch the film, and it becomes pretty consistent in the way you're losing and how you're losing. You're talking one possession, 2 points. If we could just get back maybe 3 out of 5 of those games, we'd be sitting in a pretty good spot in the league. And it's the tough part. There's no moral victories as far as I'm concerned as a head coach. But at the same time, what it just lets me know is that we can play with anybody in the league. And then going into conference tournament in Brooklyn, that's just kind of what that's kind of the mindset.
When you look at the injuries you guys have, you mentioned Keyshawn, you mentioned Ronnie. It gave you the opportunity, though, against Duquesne to have some guys who haven't played 25, 30 minutes a night during the season. They got that opportunity against Duquesne. Kind of evaluate what you saw from those guys. And were some of the mental mistakes just because guys aren't used to playing that many minutes, maybe not used to being in at certain times, or no excuses for that? You can't make those mistakes.
It's no. I got to give these guys credit. You're talking about Baraka Koji, who's a freshman. You're talking about Austin Ball, who's a freshman, and down the stretch, both those guys were in the game. Baraka played 36 minutes. You're asking a guy to run your team offensively, but then also guard one of the best players in the league. I thought our guys looked real lethargic from the start of the game. But again, he's a freshman. He's 18 years old, and putting him in that situation is not ideal. Obviously, him and Ronnie have been so well together, and as far as I'm concerned, those guys battled. And again, this is part of their growth as well, in having that type of an opportunity.
It's a heck of a way to make a living, right? To pay on 18-year-olds
to
do things for you. As we get towards the end of the regular season, and again, maybe you haven't had time to think and reflect on it, but from the beginning of the year, from November till now, what have you seen in yourself as far as the growth that you've made as a head coach?
Oh man, this is barbershop talk right here.
Well, it's the last show of the year, so I got to ask these questions now, right?
I would say, the player coach relationship. I've always been a coach that, obviously with recruiting guys, you're very close to your players. I thought that I would maybe somewhat lose that and create somewhat of a separation, but that's still there, and I do value that a lot. I think that's why these guys play so hard for me, and so I'm growing every game. I have my play sheet that every game I kind of have like 8 to 10 things that I want to go to. And as the season has progressed, I barely look at the thing anymore. And so there's growth there. But I'm growing every day. I'm growing every day.
When you look back at some of the things, is there any one thing that you say, maybe it is the play sheet, that you're like, hey, I knew game one, this is X, Y, and Z. This is what I'm doing as head coach. And now here we are going into game 30 coming up on Wednesday, that you go, you know what? What I thought was what I needed to do isn't. I need to adjust, and I have to do it differently.
Yeah, no, I've had to scrap a lot, especially, when you have a guy like Keyshawn Hall who averages 18 and 9, trying to figure out a way to replace that. These guys all bring different things to the table. Woody Newton, who obviously started the year very red hot. I was a little worried about that. They started putting out graphics, which I did not agree with, because I just knew what was coming. And he's really struggled in trying to figure out how he can help us, but the effort level is there. But every game brings a different challenge, and, just trying to get adjusted to put these guys in the best position is what it's kind of been for me.
The A-10 stacked at the top. I mean, you look at a team that's ranked 25th. The poll just came out earlier today. Dayton is 25th.
Yeah.
But they're third in the A-10. I mean, those top four teams, Richmond, Loyola, Dayton, VCU, it's a pretty good top four there.
Yeah, no, it's every game is going to be a barn burner. I mean, credit to metrics, because I don't know how Dayton is still ranked, but it helps that you play Houston early on in this year, and obviously they're one of the better teams in the country. But this is going to be a tight race. I just don't see how going into Brooklyn, anybody in this league can say that they're just going to walk right through the championship. It's wide open. You look at a team like LaSalle that started off obviously with some struggles, and they're right there. It's literally just one game apart for pretty much everybody in this league, and it's a tough league. We've been close to, when we played Dayton, we beat Dayton. VCU, it came down to one possession. Even Richmond, we got down, almost 17 points, and it was a one-possession game. And I just think this league is wide open, and anybody can beat anybody.
It's going to be a wild time in Brooklyn next week. Absolutely. We'll talk more about the end of the regular season for the men's basketball team. Coming up next, Vanessa Blair-Lewis of the women's team is going to join us and talk about their A-10 tournament, which starts for them on Friday. We'll do that when we come back. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Velocity Wings, for allowing us to host tonight's Coach's Show with Tony Skinn. Velocity Wings Fairfax location, just across the street from George Mason campus at University Mall on Braddock Road. Be sure to stop by here for award-winning wings, mouth-watering burgers, and quintessential game day bites that always come in clutch. He's Tony Skinn. I'm Bill Rowland. George Mason Coach's Show, coming back with Vanessa Blair-Lewis of the women's team right after this. Welcome back to the George Mason Basketball Coaches Show. I'm Bill Rowland. Tony Skinn will join us in the next segment to talk about the men's team finishing up their regular season. But right now we're joined by the women's basketball coach, Vanessa Blair-Lewis. Their regular season is done, but much more to come with the A-10 tournament coming up on Friday, Coach. You guys will play at 1:30 on Friday. You don't know who yet, because you guys, for the first time in school history, got the double bye in the A-10 tournament. I'm sure at the beginning of the year you thought, I've got the team that can do this. But once you get there, it's still got to feel pretty good.
Absolutely. I mean, those were the goals reached going into the season. It was, this season we wanted to take that next step to get to 20 wins and to also get to the top 4 in the league, and we were able to do that.
When you look at it, you guys now have some time, obviously, before you play on Friday. But the weird thing about the double bye is you've got one of 3 teams that you're going to play on Friday.
Right.
So walk me through what the prep is going to be like, because it's either going to be, let me see, I got my notes, Duquesne, LaSalle, or UMass. Now, most likely Duquesne, because they're the 5 seed. But how do you prepare for 3 different teams when you're going to have less than 24 hours when you find out who you play?
Well, we spoke about that today as a staff and with the girls. Like, you look for similarities. When you have 3 teams to prepare for, obviously you can't prepare for any one specifically. But those 3 have a lot of commonalities. And then you try to look at defensively, how did they play you? And so there were a lot of commonalities there. But for these first couple of days, we work on ourselves. We have the film to go back to see what we did when we played them. A lot of, tournament time is what you're going to do. You just got to be prepared to make shots and defend. So there are some commonalities. It's tough to prepare for 3 teams, but we'd like to be sitting here doing this than playing.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, the alternative is not as good as what you have.
Right.
So this is good. Obviously, depth from day one. You've talked about how depth of your team is going to be a strength. You go to a tournament, 3 games in 3 days. You have to feel like that may be a little bit of an advantage for you over a team that you may play that relies on maybe only 5, 6, or 7 players. So you guys have kind of played to this point now where you have it lined up 3 games, 3 days to get a title.
Absolutely. And that's specifically why we did this at the end of the year. We said, what is it going to take for us to go to the tournament? And we laid those out, scoring, playing with passion and depth. And we've been able to utilize that depth this year, having the number 3 ranked in the nation bench scoring coming in the game. And a lot of our star players like Sonia, they don't have to play long minutes. So we're hoping that we'll be able to continue that going into the tournament where other teams don't have that luxury.
You have a couple of seniors in Taylor Jamison and Jazz Dostler who have been with this program all 4 years, all throughout their career. What has it been like to watch through their eyes going from when they were freshmen, being one of the worst teams, quite honestly, in the A-10 to now being a real threat to make the NCAA tournament for the first time in school history? That had to be kind of nice for you, I would imagine, as a coach, to watch them realize that, oh my gosh, this is happening. We are one of the best teams in the A-10.
Yeah, I think it was nice towards the end. In the beginning, they were like,
right.
Like kids, we don't believe you till we see it, know, and, but when we started winning and putting, the wins on the table and just doing what we said we were going to do, you could see their buy-in become greater. And it was, wow, we can do this. We can do this. When you talk about 2 young women who did not win a game before I got here,
right.
Like they were embarrassed. They were, they did not have the credibility. No matter who walked in that door, I think it would have been that. But there was no pushback. There was, we're going to get in line and we're going to do this with you, coach. And that hence believe big. We would always say to them, like, you can't see it right now, but if you can believe it, we can get there.
Was there any particular game or moment? Because Taylor, in the last press conference, talked about it being, or last home press conference, I should say, when you guys clinched the top 4, talked about it being a fever dream. She used that term a couple of different times. Was there one moment, either a game or a practice or something, where she or Jazz came to you and said, you know what, coach, you're right, we are pretty good? Or was it just kind of throughout the year building up to that point?
You think kids say, coach, you're right?
Probably. You're probably right. That's a good point.
I'm a parent too. That typically doesn't happen.
You're right.
But I don't think it was one moment. I think it was a succession of moments.
Okay.
Where we've never beat this team and we did it. Or we didn't win 2 in a row and we did that. And so as we went along in their 3 years with me, there were moments that kept happening where the believability was, wow, we can do this. And now I think what you heard with Taylor is, wow, we did it.
Right.
We said, coaches said we're going to come in here, we're going to do this, and now we did it.
Is there a point? Well, first off, did you do the "I told you so" speech?
No,
Did you give that one yet?
No.
As you get to that point, because obviously this was a huge goal for them, how do you now flip the switch and say, okay, you did it. It's in the past. The next goal is now in front of you 3 days down to Henrico.
Yeah, we talked about instincts today. And instincts can be good and bad if you have good habits or bad habits. And so when you get into tournament play, a lot of things that you do, because there's a different type of pressure to play one game and done. It's not, oh, we can turn this and come back and regroup and go and play tomorrow. Right. The pressure is, this is all you have. So your instincts take, over at some point. So you have to have good instincts and good habits so that when that instinct comes in, that thought comes in, it's, I can do this. So this week is about being intentional for every minute. And I think Sonia said it best. I have 120 minutes left in my career. Like 120 minutes. Like we started practicing in June for this week, this moment, this 120 minutes. But you can only play it 1 minute at a time. So it's about being very intentional and making sure our instincts match our habits.
Well, and I would imagine it's probably a pretty good motivator for them to look at it and say, we've got a chance to do something else that's never been done, and that's get to an NCAA tournament.
Absolutely.
And that'll start on Friday. Coach, we appreciate you hanging out. And I'm going to let people know if they want to come down and see the women at the Atlantic 10 tournament. It tips off March 6th through the 10th down to Henrico Sports and Event Center. Season tickets for the women's first game on Friday, March 8th at 1:30 are now available through the George Mason Athletic Tickets office for $15, or fans can join the Patriot Club A-10 bracket busting road trip to Henrico for $60. That includes transportation to and from the game, a pregame reception, and much more. Visit SkinnTix.com/WBB810Tix for more information or to purchase today. Go down and see the women, Coach. I'll be there on Friday.
Appreciate
and
it.
I'm hoping to come back down on Sunday as well to see you guys cut down the nets and get to the NCAAs.
That's the plan.
It's Vanessa Blair-Lewis, our guest here. Tony Skinn right back on the other side. This is the George Mason Basketball Coaches Show. Welcome back to the George Mason Basketball Coaches Show. I'm Bill Rowland, along with head coach of the men's program, Tony Skinn, closing out the final segment here of the Coaches Show. And, Coach, actually the final segment of the Coaches Show for the year. So let's go ahead and talk about it. Last 2 games of the regular season for you. First, coming up Wednesday, a road trip to Rhode Island, a team that you guys knocked off back in January, 92-84. That was homecoming.
Yep.
Really good, high-scoring squad in that game. You had Darius Madison get 22.
Yep.
Rocco Koji at the time started his career high with 18. He then surpassed that against Dayton. But they've got some guys that can really light it up. David Green in that game, 29 points, including 6 threes.
Yeah, no, David Green started out, gave them life. He started out 6 for 6 before finally missing a couple down the stretch. But I think Rhode Island is a talented team. When you look at their roster and you look at, some of the guys that they have on their team, they've been productive. Again, they're trying to figure some things out just like we are. And they have the advantage of being at home on senior night. And so it's not going to be a walk in the park, but we're a little bit healthier, and I expect us to just go in there and fight.
You've obviously played and coached, even as an assistant, in a lot of senior night atmospheres on the road. Any different message? How do you navigate through the different type of warm-ups? And some schools will do it right before tip. Some schools will stop the warm-up and do it and then come back out. How do you navigate all that?
I try not to give that any attention. I think that the game is going to be played the way it's going to be played. It's a part of what we do, and we'll get our turn on Saturday, but try not to pay attention to that a lot.
All right, let's talk about a couple things maybe off the court. In practice,
Mm-hmm.
I want you to give me the guy if things are getting chippy, if things are getting intense, and tempers are starting to flare. Is there one guy? And I thought of this back watching when you guys were playing.
Yep.
That it seemed to me that when stuff got that way, it was Lamar Butler.
Yes, it
that
was.
always had some sort of comment or joke or anything that would kind of break everybody up. Everybody takes a deep breath and you get back to that point. Do you guys have that one guy that finds a way to have a one-liner or something to say to kind of diffuse a situation?
Yeah, it's probably a toss-up between Austin Ball and Jalen Haynes.
Okay.
It's a lot of silliness sometimes, if you ask me. But I would say it's Austin Ball and Jalen Haynes. They have, they kind of take turns on those moments in practice.
Well, there'd be a freshman. Most of the time, freshmen are quiet and kind of reserved.
Yeah, well, he's from West Virginia, so
he doesn't know any better. So I'm just saying, all right, fair enough. You talked about a senior night, and you guys will get that chance Saturday against Richmond. Guys like Trey Wood, guys like Ryan Polite, Malik Henry. Obviously, Ronnie and Malik have been here their entire career, but you're a first-year head coach. Obviously, you paid attention to what was going on because you played here.
Yep.
What's that like for them going through and coming down to maybe the last time that they play in Eagle Bank?
Yeah, no, we talked about it today in practice, actually. It's one of those things where it feels like just yesterday when I was playing on senior night, and you can't take those moments for granted. You get a chance to do this thing, and you got to be able to do it at a high level and celebrate yourself when it's all said and done. And, guys like Ronald Polite, guys like Malik Henry, who obviously stuck it out here with me, they've played for 3 different coaches. And you talk about program guys, they embody that. And so, I'm happy for those guys, and we'll definitely be celebrating them on senior night on Saturday.
What do you remember about your senior night? Do you remember who you played?
James Madison?
Correct.
Yeah,
I remember anything else about that senior night?
I think we were up maybe 20, 25. I didn't get a chance to play much because, that good old JMU rivalry.
Yeah, that game was pretty much done by halftime, I think, if I remember right. The game against Richmond on Saturday, they're obviously going to finish as a top 4, maybe even win the regular season title, depending on how things shake out. Do you use that as a measuring stick when you play them on Saturday, and maybe even win the game on Saturday? Does that message carry over then to the A-10 tournament?
Yeah, absolutely.
Guys, we just beat a top 4 team. We may even see them in the quarterfinals. Whenever it is, you can play with these teams.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing, we talked about it, there's 3 parts of a season. You have your non-conference, you have your conference, and then you have your conference tournament. there's not a better time to be playing the best basketball that you can be playing going into Brooklyn. And so Richmond is going to be a dogfight. They're playing to win the league. They've got one of the better players in the league in Jordan King, and so I expect a tough team that's going to come in here. And at the end of the day, down the stretch, everyone's playing their best basketball and their best brand of basketball. And so for us, it's definitely it's going to be a game for us for momentum to be able to go into Brooklyn for sure.
Well, we're definitely going to be cheering you guys on in Brooklyn. If folks want to come up to Brooklyn, the 2024 Atlantic 10 Tournament all-session ticket books for the tournament up at Barclays are now available through the George Mason Athletic Ticket Office for $259. Purchasing from George Mason is one of the only ways to get into the A10 school section for all the games. You can visit gomason.com/MBBA10Tix for more information or to purchase today. Coach, we're looking forward to the game at Rhode Island on Wednesday. Looking forward to senior night against Richmond. Actually, it'll be senior afternoon because afternoon tip at UVA.
2 o'clock game.
Last opportunity for folks to come out and see your team at Eagle Bank Arena this season. Then it's off to Brooklyn, and who knows what can happen there, right?
Absolutely.
We appreciate all the time this year, Coach. As always, we'll see you at Eagle Bank on Saturday. Good luck with everything. Head coach Tony Skinn here. Join us. I'm Bill Rowland. This has been the George Mason Basketball Coaches Show from Velocity Wings in Fairfax.